Good afternoon, or it could be good morning or good evening, wherever you are. Thank you so much to everybody that's joined us this live. Some of you, of course, will be watching this recording later on at your leisure, and perhaps with even family members who are all very, very welcome, of course, to take part in the programs here that Hume City Council has been very kind in delivering to everybody. Quick recap, my name is Mark Butler. How you doing? I'm a mental health expert and I work with organizations globally now, thanks to COVID, in sort of supporting people to be the best version of themselves that they can be. Part of what I do, and this is one typical sort of program, is what we call the Self-Care Bento Box series. And this is session 2 of the Bento Box series. If you missed session 1, please go back and you'll find the recording, and I invite you to watch that as well. So today we're going to be talking about, if you recall when we started the session last week, we talked about an action plan that you can download from your intranet alongside these recordings as well. And the action plan pointed out that there are a few different areas around self-care that we will be focusing on. And if you recall, let me just get out of your way a little bit here. If you recall, or if you saw the last session, you'll know that we spoke about looking up. By that I mean stopping, smell the roses, sort of a check-in as to how we're looking after ourselves in the engine room, basically, sleep, diet, not just what we eat, but everything we consume, exercise, and sort of approaching sort of well-being, if you like, and how that sort of how we're experiencing that. Today, we're going to talk about looking inwards. And so this is spending a bit of time focusing in on ourselves, because that's as important as the engine room, because it's looking after here mainly. But we'll talk about what it means to take some time out. We kind of know what that usually means. Most people would. Time in might be a slightly different sort of interpretation of what that might be. But, you know, just reflecting on ourselves and sort of tips and tricks on how to sort of relax and maybe even sleep a little bit better as well. So that's the premise of today's session. And as with all of the sessions we'll be talking about, it's about finding balance. It's not enough to just focus on one element of our well-being. We kind of have to look at all three of those. And as you know, in the last sort of session, we talked about things like the fake commute and how to introduce a little more exercise into our lives. Why we need to eat properly, not just what to eat. I'm not here to tell you to eat your veggies. I don't do that. But why we need to and what's involved in that. And that forms part of today as well. So as I say, and I won't ask you to show your hands because most of the cameras are turned off, and hopefully your microphones are muted as well, folks. If I'll invite you again to do that, that'd be great. But just a question to ask yourself, is it something that you remember to do, to drink water on a regular basis? We all can tend to forget things like that. I personally went to bed the other night and found my water bottle beside the bed, which means I didn't drink all day. Forgot. And sometimes, you know, we just get busy and stuff, and that happens. So it's important that we remember to do stuff like that. We got to eat regularly. We've got to eat sort of 3 meals a day. You got to start your morning with something, eat protein with every meal, etc., etc. Again, I'm not telling you what to eat, but I'm saying why we need to eat those things. And that was the last session. We focused very much on that. So today we're going to talk a lot more about the brain and brain health. I'm going to start by saying that what I'm about to share with you ultimately isn't true. But it's a great descriptor, so that's kind of why I stick with it still. There aren't 3 parts to the brain like you're seeing on the camera there. The brain is a massively complex and constantly interacting sort of system. But it can help sometimes to point out that there are sort of elements of the brain that are sort of pre-thinking and that are automatic reactions, etc. And I just want to quickly tap into that because it talks about how our sort of survival system works. We've all heard of the fight, flight, and freeze, or the fight and flight system, which was designed to keep us alive. And the thing with it is it's done a superb job of keeping us alive. The downside is it tends to err on the side of caution. So sometimes it reacts as if we're in danger when we're kind of not.
That's all.
And the other issue with that is that somebody's Paul G, can you please mute yourself? Thanks, mate.
Damn, sorry. Yep.
Good man. Thank you. What also happens when we're in that sort of fight or flight response, the brain doesn't know the difference between stress and danger, and it responds in exactly the same way. So that's why I want to talk to you about this now, because we're not necessarily in danger, but we can be in an overwhelming stress situation. And the system that is fired up is the one that's kept us alive as a species up until now. So good on it. I'm not saying it's doing the wrong thing. It's just that we need to be aware of what it's doing. So the first area I'll talk about, Gabby, you need to mute your microphone if you don't mind. Thank you. The first thing that we need to do is have just a consideration of what we call here the lizard brain, which you'll see on your screen. And when we talk about the lizard brain, what we're really talking about is that the elements of the brain structure that respond sort of automatically to stuff. Like it controls breathing, it controls our body temperature, it controls our level of balance, it controls blinking, and all of the things that we need to do involuntarily that we don't need to think about. In fact, we probably couldn't stop them if we tried, because it's in that system is where we react to elements of stress or elements of when we're feeling some level of overwhelm. It's in response to what this middle part of the brain talks about, what we call the monkey brain or the mammalian brain. And in that area is something called the limbic system. The limbic system has two little almonds in the middle of our head. They're really about that size. And if you drew a line in through your eyes and in through your ears, where those 2 points meet, you will find the amygdala, the traffic lights of the brain, if you like. And that's what determines whether we respond in a stressful situation or not. And we know from our work with veterans and first responders who have been in overwhelming post-traumatic stress for such a long time, those almonds actually start to look like raisins. They become completely shriveled up and burnt out. And that's what happens when we're in prolonged areas of burnout. So we know there are physical changes that occur in the brain as a result of overwhelming levels of stress. And burnout is basically being in that overwhelming or in a chronic stress situation without any sort of respite, if you like. We'll talk about resilience in a later session, but today I just want to talk about this is how the brain structure roughly works. As I say, if you're just joining out, there aren't 3 parts of the brain, but there are some areas that are more prominent than others during times of stressful response. So that monkey brain, the traffic lights in the brain, it tells the lizard brain what to do to keep us safe. And all of that happens before the human brain has even gotten out of bed, before it's even sat up to take notice. All of this stuff happens really, really quickly. We're not allowed stop to think about whether we're in danger because we'd be dead. So this whole system reacts automatically. It responds instantaneously to keep us safe before we've even worked out, no, we're not in danger. It's actually okay. You know, that's not a bear yelling at me. That's actually my phone that's ringing. You know, that's not a tiger attacking me. That's actually a bus beeping behind me. All of these things that can kind of trigger our response have to happen before we stop to think about it. And that's what's happening in our brains when we're under a particular amount of pressure or stress. We're not in danger, but it reacts in the same way. So what we're doing is we're spending way too much time in that sort of fight or flight response. It's called the sympathetic nervous system. It comes out in sympathy with the situation that we find ourselves in. The opposing part of that is called the parasympathetic nervous system. Think of it like a paramedic that's coming to rescue us. And so we should spend most of our time in the parasympathetic rest and digest period, not in that fight or flight response, because we're getting our energy from cortisol and we're getting our energy from adrenaline, which is going to burn us out very, very quickly. So we need to spend more time looking after our brains because we can't rely on our fight or flight response to do it. It'll just burn us out. So much of today, we will talk about what we can do around our brain health. And this, when I talk about looking in, that's what this session is about. There are a number of different sort of areas that we need to sort of consider. Somebody's microphone is still on. Can I just, a quick reminder to everybody, please mute your microphone so that it doesn't come over the top because you're being recorded. Let's talk about some of the different areas of the brain. Let's starting on exercise, which we talked about in the last session. And the reason I'm going to tap into it again, because we talked about how exercise is good for the body, but let's talk about why exercise is good for the brain, because it is more than just sort of cardio, fitness, etc. Think about the brain for a minute. It represents about 2% of our body weight. It takes about 20% of our energy. And it's fed on glucose. That's where it gets its energy from. We're learning, Irene, your microphone is on. We're learning more and more in recent times about some of the sort of issues that we're experiencing, like Alzheimer's and dementia, etc. Dementia is in very recent times now being spoken about. It's being called type 3 diabetes. And the reason for that is because as we age, our system for producing insulin and to fighting the sort of glucose and blood sugar levels in our blood and in our system becomes less efficient. And so it's putting all of its energy fighting the excessive sugar that we're eating and not nearly enough in removing the sort of plaque that sort of builds up in our brains when we're sleeping. And I'll come to that in a minute too. So just so as you know, dementia is starting to be called type 3 diabetes because of this insulin sort of production reducing, fighting to counteract sugar instead of actually cleaning our brain. So we can, again, this is all about sort of managing what we eat and how we eat and when we eat, etc. It's really important. But it's just also the brain is a small part of the body, huge amounts of energy. So when we exercise, what we're actually doing, not only are we sort of getting fit and healthy, but we're reducing anxiety. We're increasing norepinephrine. And other brain chemicals that we use in response to stress. We know from the last session that dopamine and serotonin are the two sort of mood stabilizing and stress fighting brain chemicals that are produced in the gut. Again, you see, we're tying back into diet, but it all comes to brain health. We need those brain chemicals and we need those hormone neurotransmitters, etc., provided by the gut through the water that we drink and the food that we eat to create sustenance for the brain. So the exercise that we then do reduces the anxiety levels, which helps with those brain chemicals. But also something else that exercise does is called neurogenesis. And by that, we're talking about creating new brain cells. So when we exercise, not only are we combating all of those issues that we've just spoken about, but we're also creating new brain cells and creating and solidifying sort of pathways in the brain, etc. There's something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, is like a steroid for the brain. And it's involved in exercise and neurogenesis as well. And it's created when we exercise and actually kicks in just when you finish exercise. So exercise for brain health is as important as exercise is for body health. So it's really important that we do it. When I talk about time out, I'm talking about, when I'm taking some time out from something, I'm removing myself from stressful situations. We're doing that to sort of recharge the brain and to build its energy sort of surplus back up again. And the way we do that, taking time out, I'm talking about things like daydreaming. And Dr. Dan Siegel is a brain expert, and he says that we should allocate about 20 minutes a day to just daydream and let the mind wander wherever the hell it wants to go. It can be a very, very useful way of actually solving issues that we're experiencing, because even though we're daydreaming, the brain is still working. And it can find itself looking for solutions to ever-present problems that seem to be niggling at us. So it's a non-focused time out that allows our brains to recharge and can resolve some of the issues that can be sort of slowing us down, if you like. Let's keep going clockwise. When we talk about connection and connecting with people, what I'm talking about there is relationships with other people. What we do to sort of play, which is coming up in a few minutes as well. The sorts of things that we do and that we need to do in order to reinforce that sort of circuitry in the brain that says that we're a pack animal, we belong to something. It's important that we know that we belong and we matter and we're valued. And the only way we can really do that is connecting with other people. So to activate and reinforce that sort of circuitry in the brain, it's hugely important for us. It supports the hippocampus, which is the sort of memory area of the brain as well. Sleep we talked about last time, and I'll just touch off it again very quickly. As I said, type 3 diabetes is occurring as a result of our glymphatic system not washing this sort of plaque and physically cleaning areas of the brain while we sleep. Deep sleep is a deep clean. That cerebral spinal fluid is flushing our brains while we sleep. Hugely important, and could even be the most important thing we do. Let me just get out of the way for a second. When I talk about focus time and time in are beside each other here, but they're actually two different things. Focus time is really when we are goal oriented and sort of focusing in on something specific that needs to happen. It takes a lot of energy from the brain, and we can do it in short bursts. Shouldn't try to focus for too long on something. We just kind of wear ourselves out, if you like. But focus time, as you can imagine, it's a bit like exercising any kind of a muscle. If you're focusing on it and you're working hard on something, you're going to deepen the connections that exist. Time in is very different to time out. Time out is when you just let your mind wander, counting your toes kind of thing. Time in actually integrates the brain, and it's when we're quietly reflective, when we meditate. I don't know if any of you meditate or not, but there's a massive, massive value to it, and I'll talk about it in a second. Time in allows us to focus on feelings, depending on how sort of emotionally connected we are, what our emotional intelligence is like, and just tuning in on the body. It doesn't have to take long. You can do it when you're washing your cup at the sink, just to stop and just feel into the body and find what's going on for us where. Really, really valuable. Playtime is when we're talking about forming new connections. Playtime is about being spontaneously creative. We need a good sort of belly laugh, if you like. And we need to do that in collaboration with other people, or even playing with the family dog, whatever it is, but we need to find playtime. When we're burned out or when we're burning out, the first thing to go is this. Every time, first thing to go. And it really shouldn't be. It's a really, really important sort of process, if you like. So looking into the body and looking into the brain, these are the sorts of things that we really need to do in order to support our well-being and to support our brain health. Honestly, it's a hugely important part, and it's something that we tend to miss, particularly when we're talking about self-care, because usually we are just about sleep, diet, and exercise, etc. So let me just talk about then for a couple of minutes. I mentioned meditating. And if it's not something that you do, can I really strongly recommend you give it a go. And if you've tried it before and you thought, no, my brain just races, I can't sit still for any length of time, stick with it. First thing I'll say to you is, if you're trying to empty your mind of all thought, it's not going to happen. There's a monkey in a tree and it's jumping all over the place in our heads, always is. And if you're noticing that your mind is flying or racing, then your meditation is doing the job it's meant to do, because you don't judge yourself for that. We just go, oh, there it goes again. Let me just stop and just listen to a sound, or listen to my breathing, or I can even do a quick body scan. And a body scan is just focusing on one element. Focus on your big toe, on your left foot, and then slowly work your way up around your whole body, back down to the big toe on the right foot, and just checking in to see if any muscles are tensed, etc. If you can do that for 10 minutes, it switches off that fight or flight response, and it just focuses you in on exactly what we need to do to sort of support ourselves. And if you're finding yourself waking up in the middle of the night, your cortisol production is all out of whack, this is how you actually bring it back into line. And you do this on a regular basis. It's a fantastic way of getting back to sleep. There are any number of apps that you can sort of download. The Headspace app is there. I talked about a couple in the last session as well. Balance is another one. I think that might even be a free app, and it's available on sort of iOS or Android, I think is the other one. So there's no reason to not meditate. And their Insight Timer is the other app I spoke about. And you'll find those in the sort of session when you watch the last one, if you want to do that as well. It's probably a good idea. So we're talking about meditating for just 10 minutes at a time. I have a Tibetan singing bowl. I listen to that, and I think it's really, really useful. There's a great Thich Nhat Hanh was a Zen sort of master who was responsible for bringing mindfulness to the Western world in many respects. Thich Nhat Hanh and somebody called John Kabat-Zinn, who's a medical doctor, kind of westernized it, which was good. But they both say that, look, everything and everyone and anything that we know is in the present moment. And if we're anxious, we're worrying about something in the past or something in the future, we're not actually paying attention to right now, which is where everything exists. And anything else we're doing that's not in the present moment is actually a kind of, not a falsehood, but you know what I mean? It's not sort of, it's not focusing on where we actually should be. So let me talk about playtime for a second. As I said, it's one of the first things to disappear. And I was even talking to a play therapist, an expert in child psychology, just the other day. And I said, what do you do to play? And she stopped and she said, shit, I don't. And I said, yeah, I know, I forget to do it as well. So I said, well, what would you do to play? And it's a question I always ask groups like yourselves. And if your answer to me, if I said, stick it in the chat box, tell me what it is you do to play, I'll usually get things like, I play video games. And I said, yeah, that's a precursor to addiction. That's just distraction. That's a different thing. I play tennis. Yeah, exercise. I play golf. Yeah, maybe, because you're out with a group of people. But if you want to really call it spontaneous fun, silliness, that you can have a good belly laugh and not worry about the consequences, then you'd have to play tennis or golf with the wrong hand, and just have a bit of a hit and a giggle sort of thing. So I'm talking about, some people say, I go to comedy clubs. They go, yeah, all right, I can see that. That makes sense. You're having a good laugh. Other people will say, I play with my kids. And I go, all right, I get that. That's both connecting and it's also sort of play. You're coloring in, adult coloring in. Books became huge there for a while. Other people will say, I play with my dog. I go, okay, now we're talking. If you want to understand the value of play and you have a dog, just pick up their leash or pick up their ball and just watch their reaction. Bang, it's on. They're ready for anything. And that's kind of what we need to get back to as well. And we need to get back to just that kind of silliness that we would do. It could be playing charades. It could be doing something like that with people in your life that will give you that sort of sense of joy that is the first thing to go when we're stressed and when we're burnt out. George Bernard Shaw famously said, We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. And I think there's a huge value in that, because I think he's right. It's something that we, and I would ask you, just have a think about this for a second. Finish off this sentence for me. I'm watching the time here. Sorry. And if you want to put it in the chat box to give somebody else a sort of an opportunity to sort of compare, that would be great. But finish this sentence for me. I feel most playful when whatever it is. I feel most playful when and just have a think about what that answer might be. And you shouldn't have to think about it for more than 30 seconds, to be honest. I'm going to keep moving because I am mindful of time. We talk about rest and the value of rest, and I appreciate all of you being here during a lunch and learn session, because I understand that sort of it being lunchtime, it's kind of your time and I'm encroaching on it, and I'm hoping that somebody said in the last session that I wasn't preachy, and God, I hope I'm still not preachy. I'm still living off that, whoever it was, thank you for it. But I often say to people, if I was to give you a tip on a horse that is going to come in at 5-1 odds, you'd want to know about it, right? If I said, I've got an investment here that's going to deliver a 500% return very, very quickly, you'd want to know what it is. And it's the exact same thing with rest. If you invest 20 minutes in just taking a break and resting, just get out, even if it means resting is going for a walk away from your phone and your computer, 20 minutes rest equates to between 90 and 120 minutes of vastly improved concentration, energy, confidence, motivation. Everything lifts in the immediate hour and a half to 2 hours after taking a 20-minute rest, sometimes even longer. Take your break, take your 20 minutes, sit in nature. We talked about it in the last session, everyone should take 20 minutes in nature every day, unless you're really busy, in which case you should probably take an hour. So resting, and 20 minutes, fantastic. What if you don't have 20 minutes? What can we do? Here we go. Bloody breathing. There's a friend of mine who was given a job of training the Australian Federal Police Tactical Response Group. The ones with the black everything and the big machine gun and all that. And he thought, oh Christ, I have to teach these people about mindfulness. And so he walked into the room and he said, okay, I'm going to give you some tips so that when everybody around you is flying into a panic, you are centered, you're grounded, you're in control, and you're calm and you're collected. And they said, and like they're sitting in a row, just kind of staring at him, chewing their gum. Yeah, what you got? And he said, I'm going to teach you something called tactical composure. And of course, they love the name tactical, jumped all over it. And what he taught him is what I'm going to tell you now. It's called combat breathing in every other police and military sort of organization in the world. And it's you might know it as box breathing. The idea is that you breathe in for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, breathe out for a count of 4, and then hold that out breath for a count of 4. That's the tricky bit. That can be hard to do because your brain's going, what are you doing? I like to do it at the bottom of my swimming pool. That's a real awakener. But what it does is it just stops the mind racing and whatever else it's doing. Great value in it. This second one here is something that we use with kids and actually adults as well. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have 5 senses. Pick 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can touch, 2 you can taste, 1 you can smell. Mix those up any way you like. And it doesn't even matter if you find that number of things. Just the very act of looking for them is enough to just slow you right down and sort of bring you back into the here and now. If you're finding, kids are overwhelmed or getting anxious, or you see someone in a panic attack, you can use that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 tactic. And it's even a great game for kids to sort of play. on a long car journey. We got some of those coming up with Christmas, etc. And this last one here again is Thich Nhat Hanh breathing exercise. Breathe in for a long, slow breath. Breathe out for a long, slow breath. Then say the word deep as you breathe in, slow as you breathe out, calm as you breathe in, ease as you breathe out, smile as you breathe in, and release as you breathe out. And I use that to talk people down from panic attacks. I did one very, very recently. Someone stuck in a Bunnings. We just went through that maybe 3 or 4 times, and he was able to settle himself enough to get out. So there are things that we can do in the space of a minute or two that can just kind of settle us and slow us right down. Well worth doing. I want to leave some time for questions in case we've got it. Oh God, the chat box is full. I love it. I shared the action plan with you last week, folks. I'd recommend to grab it if you haven't already. And just have a think about the things we spoke about today. So what we talked about relaxing, we talked about sort of what's going on in the brain and why we need to do all of the different things we need to do to look after our brain. If you took on the things I suggested today, all of them would take maybe, 40 minutes in your day. If you don't take all of them on, that's okay too. But what I would do is grab the action plan, watch this video again with a family member for accountability and commitment. But if you're going to do anything, do me a favor, work out what it is you need to do to find some play and fun back in your lives. If that's gone from your life, you need to get that back. It's the first thing to go when we're overwhelmed, and it's one of the most important things. Everything else that we talked about, there's, sleep is really important. We talked about last time as well. Meditating, just get into the habit of slowing down and just checking in on ourselves. And if we can do those sorts of things, we'll be doing a lot to look after ourselves. And take your breaks. You've earned them, for God's sake. Now, again, if anybody has any questions that you want to ask me or something that, we're going to go to some question time here now in a minute. But if there's something else that you want to share with me, if you want my newsletter, if you want to follow me on WhatsApp or follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, or anything like that, please do. And this is my new book. You'll be hearing more about this in the next session. It's coming out on, I think, 14th of December. Up Yours, The Pursuit of Radical Self-Care. It's everything that we're talking about in the sessions. Radical means far-reaching and thorough. It's not just sleep, diet, exercise. It's a much bigger story than that. And it's about upping your level of self-care so you're being the best version of yourself that you can be. So I'll share some more details with that sort of in the coming weeks with you. I'm going to stop sharing now, and we're now available if anybody's got any questions at all. I'm sort of back here on the sort of gallery view, if you like, and let's have a look at the okay. Maria in the chat box is offering short meditations 2 times a week. If you'd like to join her, I think, Maria, well done. I'd come along to that myself. Thanks for the tip. Yeah. Crank up the music and dance. This is to have some fun. Love it. Feel most playful when I'm on holidays. I get that, Liz. We can't be on holidays every day. Probably need to find something else as well. Dance or banter with my bestie? Absolutely. Dancing in the grass at an outdoor event? You got it, Claire. You're on it. When I remember to relax. Yeah, exactly. We're too busy sometimes. I'm relaxing as hard as I can is something that my sister-in-law says. Never stop playing, so I guess I'll never grow old. Kylie, I love that. I hope it's true. I hope you never do. Reading stories with my grandsons. Beautiful. Playful when I'm surrounded by good energy. Yeah, when I'm not in front of the computer. You got it, Joanna. Feeling old because I've forgotten how to play. Jean. It's in us. It's instinctive if we just make time. Find some time for yourself. Get it back. Rest. Hume should provide sleep pods. Nice, but not necessary. Do you know what? The companies that I know that provide sleep pods, in my experience, they only provide them because they demand too much from the people that are working there. I'm talking about the sort of FaceTimes and the Googles and the Apples and all of that. They'll do your laundry, they'll cut your hair. People think, oh God, that's amazing. Nah, that's because they don't want you to leave your desk. Sleep pods, yeah, you can have a 20-minute rest because I'm getting 14 hours a day out of you. If Hume would provide the sleep pods and you still have control over an overall part of your well-being and your self-care, great. Hug a tree. Yeah, why not? Lovely. Great idea. Yes, the Wim Hof breathing. Fantastic. Karen, that's a great one. That's a good one with kids as well. 5 blue things, 4 yellow things. Brilliant. Nikki, spot on. That's great. And look out the window, folks, in the outside world. Thanks, Gina. I'm glad I made you chuckle. Thanks, Maria. I appreciate it. A jacuzzi at home would be nice. Yeah, it would. Yeah. A 30-inch waist would be nice, but I'm miles off both of those happening. Breathing works, and at times it's challenging pushing out thoughts of what I need to do at work. Yeah. Yes. Look, monkeys in a tree. Our brains are always flying all over the place. Look, that happens. But if you notice it's happening, then you've achieved what you need to achieve, because you can look at it then without judgment, and you can say, oh, my mind's racing again. Okay, I need to get back into just thinking about my breathing. Just my nostrils are whistling. What's going on there? Or it could be I can feel, focusing on the cold air warming up as it goes up through your nostrils. And then you notice your mind is gone again. You just bring it back. It's absolutely fine. It's not doing the wrong thing. You're not getting this wrong. Noticing it is actually achieving it. And the more you do it, the better you'll get. Thanks, Kirsten. Well, yeah, exactly. When we need them the most. Thanks, Julie. Need to make some time to follow them. Do you know what? Just pick one. No, my whole idea of radical self-care is you can't just pick one. But I think there's a great value in, let's start somewhere. James Clear talks about atomic habits. He doesn't mean sort of nuclear war. He's talking about those tiny little microscopic changes, because you can't improve on a habit until you actually establish one. We talked about that in the last session. A 1-minute plank after you brush your teeth morning and night. Suddenly you've got an exercise regime. Karen, I'm delightful it's been helpful to you. I was surprised by how difficult I found it to relax during the session. A good lesson in itself. Yeah, right. I am speaking a million miles an hour, trying to get all the information out to you. And that probably doesn't help. But if there's... what is my username? Do you know what? I'll have to find it. I don't know. I've got people who do stuff like that for me now. That sounds very wanky. I didn't mean it to. Sorry. But you'll find me on LinkedIn is probably where I do most of my work. I don't think my name is any different than Mark Butler. I'll share it. I'll share it with Nikki and figure out where it is. Yeah, I really didn't think it was difficult to find, but I will. I'll share that. Meditation absolutely helps. No, it really, really does. Folks, it's... are there any other sort of questions or any comments anybody wants to make? Because I am mindful we're at about 43 minutes past the hour now. I really appreciate so many of you sticking around as long as you have. This is really, really good. Thanks, Faye. Anyone who's in the lotto tonight, oh God, I better check if I'm in. And if I am, I still promise to come back in 2 weeks' time and we'll do the third session, which is all about relationships. And we're going to talk about boundaries. What is a boundary? How to say no, stuff like that, how to push back when we're overwhelmed. And I did promise Nikki that I would remind you of Carniche is your EAP service. Carniche, is it? Sorry, thanks, Nikki. Carniche is your EAP service, and it's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you feel you need it, use it. That's what it's there for. And I'm a big fan of all of those sort of processes that we can do to support ourselves. Zainal, thank you very much. Thanks. You enjoyed the book title? Yeah. Yeah, it's up there. You got to sort of shake the tree sometimes, don't you? So thanks very much, everybody. I really, really appreciate your time.